Afternoon, friends. I'm Ms. Natalie from the Acca-Geek branch of Prince George's County Memorial Library System, and welcome to our Crafternoon. For today's craft, we are going to be making beautiful, fluffy, snowy owls by painting with an unexpected paintbrush. Today we're going to be painting with some cotton balls, and that's how we get this nice fluffiness. We're going to need a few things to get started. The aforementioned cotton balls, some white paint because snowy owls are white birds. I thinned out this paint a little bit because the thicker the paint, the more difficult it is to paint with a non-standard paintbrush, and we want this to be easy. Since we are painting with white, we're going to want a non-white piece of paper. I've got some cardboard that I got in a box and I wanted to recycle it for something. But if you've got any color of construction paper, that will work well for you too. We're going to want something to hold the paint we're using. I put my thinned paint in this little lid. To make the features of the bird, the eyes and the beak, we're going to need some scraps of other paper. I've got some yellow and black for eyes, and then I thought maybe some brown for a nice branch for him to be on. We're going to cut those out with a pair of scissors. If you've got kids' safety scissors, I recommend you use those. And we're going to stick them on with some tape here. You could use glue, but it takes a little bit longer for that to dry. At the end, you may want to add some details. So we've also got a writing implement. This one is a marker. It doesn't have to be a marker. All right, so I've got a piece of larger paper underneath the paper that I'm using for my art. To protect the table, I recommend doing that if you're using something like paint. I'm going to put my paint nearby. I'm going to put my fluffy little paintbrushes nearby. And we are going to see if we can make a circle for the head and then a larger circle for the body. Just a little bit of paint to start with, see how it goes. And you can see the texture of our tiny little paintbrush here is going to be showing up on the paper. That's what makes him so fluffy. All the little crinkles and edges are going to give him that downy look that we find so appealing. You know, I don't think I need to go a second round with some more paint. I think that looks pretty good. We are going to need a little bit more for his body though. That's going to go right underneath his head, as though we were making a snowman. I like making the head and the body not very different in size because that makes him look more like a baby bird. If you were making an adult, the body would be a little bit larger. I see a little bit of cardboard coming through. I'm just going to go back over and try to cover up any little bit that I see inside my boundaries. Yep, that looks good. We are going to let this paint dry a little bit before we put the face on. And it's not going to take long because there is not much paint. It's not running. I dabbed a little bit of paint over a large surface, but we are going to give it just a minute to adhere and dry out so that we don't smush him. While that's happening, I'm going to make a little branch for him to be sitting on. You can use construction paper for this. I just had some scraps of paper from something else and I didn't want to waste paper, so I'm just using these leftover pieces. That's a little bit too long. How about that? Yep, that's pretty good. And I'll stick this over here. We're not going to need a lot of tape, just a little bit. I'm going to make a little tape tube. I'm going to roll up a piece of tape so that it's sticky on all sides. They sell tape that's already sticky on all sides, but for me it's easier to just use my regular tape and then fold it over a couple times. This one's kind of long, so I'm using a piece of tape at this end and a piece of tape at this end so he doesn't flop all over. Yep, that's a pretty reasonable little branch. Yeah, and that looks pretty dry. Nothing's coming up off my finger. All right, we are going to make his eyes then. I'm going to cut a little piece of paper for his pupils and a little piece of paper for his irises. We want the pupils to be a little bit smaller than the irises because they're going to go inside. I'm going to cut these first. I'm going to show you a little trick to make sure your eyes come out even. I'm going to cut the paper in half and put it on top of each other. This one is on top of this one. I'm going to cut it once so that they are both the same shape and the same size. So now I only cut it once, but I have two identical pupils. I'm going to do the same thing with his irises. And I know I want them to be a little bit bigger than the pupils, so after I put this piece of paper on top of this one, I'm also going to put a pupil on there, just so I can kind of tell what I'm aiming for. That looks pretty reasonable. Let's set out these eyes. Yes, those look about the same size. They look like they'll both physically fit on the head. We're pretty good. We're going to want to tape the eyes together and then tape the eyes onto the bird. We're going to make another little tape roll. Actually, it doesn't need to be that big. I'm going to cut it in half. And I'm going to sandwich it in between the pupil and the iris. There we go. And the same thing over here. All right. And then we need two more tape rolls to go between the bird's head and the irises. Adorable. Owls famously have very large eyes for their head. This is still a little bit of an exaggeration, but I think it makes him look cute. We're going to need a little triangle for his beak. And I'm just going to use the leftover from when we were making his eyes and cut a triangle off. Yep, that'll be pretty good. And we're going to make another tube of tape to hold that on. All right, not too shabby. Now here's something that I learned about snowy owls just this morning. Male snowy owls are typically almost entirely white, and female snowy owls have little flecks of brown on them, and that's how scientists frequently tell them apart from a distance. So we're going to put some little flecks on this snowy owl. To show the different kinds of snowy owls you can have. And the marker worked pretty well even on the body because this is very thin paint and it dries very quickly. Let's add a few details though. I think this snowy owl is somewhere in the mountains. I love a nice mountain. Let's stick several mountains in here. I think on the mountains they've got trees that have their own snowy owls in them. And I think it's nighttime because I seem to recall that owls really enjoy being out at nighttime and they're nocturnal animals. So let's put a moon up in here. Yeah, that's pretty good. And maybe some stars, because if it's night and there's a moon, then you can probably see some stars too, unless it's very cloudy. That's pretty good. But I've got all this space underneath. What should go underneath there? We've got sky, we've got background, maybe something in the foreground. Maybe there's little, ooh, what if there's a little stream running underneath the tree? I like a nice stream too. Some bushes around the stream, growing some berries so that the animals have some stuff to eat. Very nice. This is a pretty good winter craft, and it is starting to get cold, so my mind always turns to the animals that like the cold when I'm starting to feel cold personally. We've made this owl pretty quickly. There are other animals that you can make like this too. There are a variety of white fluffy animals that like Arctic climates. You could make yourself a nice polar bear. You could make yourself a nice Arctic fox. You could end up with a nice little zoo of different animals. So we've got the boy owl from the beginning and the lady owl that we've just made. She's looking a little bit fancier because we gave her all of this background, but I bet they're friends. Thank you so much for joining us for Crafternoon today, and I hope you enjoy our other events that we have coming up. I'll see you later. Bye.